Welcome to The Survivor's Voice, where resilience meets hope. I'm your host, Angie Sedor. I'm sitting here with our producer and editor, Christina Elder.
Thank you so much, Angie. It's definitely a different experience being on this side of the room.
Yes.
But I am really grateful for the opportunity to talk to our listeners a little bit. I just want to say really quick that this show has really changed me hearing these stories. It's a real reminder of the realities of this world, the horrifics of the world, but also that healing is not just about surviving. Healing is about being heard, being validated, being understood by people.
Yeah. And that's what The Survivor's Voice is all about.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I love that we've been able to create a space for our guests where they can be heard and validated and understood.
Yes.
I'm actually really excited and very humbled by the feedback we've gotten from our guests actually about how great of an experience they've had.
And we've had such just a variety and a range of guests on our show. I mean, we have gone through trafficking and medical trauma, church trauma, war. I mean, just so many different things. And maybe some of our listeners are thinking about telling their story.
That would be so awesome. If that's the case, I would like our audience to know we would be honored and privileged to be able to be the platform for them if they so chose to tell their story.
Yes.
We also believe that every single story can help someone else.
Yes.
That's our whole purpose here. Our listeners should know that you don't need to be a speaker. You don't even necessarily need to be past your trauma. You just have to show up. So if listening to this is maybe making your heart beat a little faster, maybe that's a sign that you need to contact us, that maybe you can help somebody else with your story.
If you feel led to speak, we're ready to listen. So reach out to us at booking@thesurvivorsvoice.net. Your story matters here because your voice is your power. Special thank you to Bowman Carter for creating the original music for this podcast. You can find Bowman's music by searching for Bowman Carter on Spotify and on YouTube. We've attached his links in our description of today's episode. Please show him love and support. Today on The Survivor's Voice.
It didn't become clear to me until my 30s. When I got into recovery, my disease had a voice that was so much louder than my authentic voice.
The content shared on the Survivor's Voice podcast is intended to be informative and inspirational. We are not licensed therapists, counselors, or medical professionals. The views expressed are based on personal experiences and should not be considered professional advice. If you are in need of mental health support, please consult a licensed professional. Before we begin, this episode may contain discussions of trauma, abuse, or other sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised. We don't recommend playing this show with young children present, and we encourage you to prioritize your well-being. Welcome to The Survivor's Voice. I'm your host, Angie Sedor, and today we are sitting with a guy that I met, I feel like it's been about a year now. His name is Gabe, and he actually has a really deep story. He's been through a lot of things, but he's overcome so many things, and he's used it in his current career to help other people. And so I'm really grateful that he's here today. So let's get into it. Gabe, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us what you do.
Well, start with my job title. I'm Senior Behavioral Health Advisor for Paradigm Treatment, which is a primary mental health facility here in Hayden. Mm-hmm. We have 2 houses here in Hayden for adolescents and another house for adults just up the road in Athol.
Yeah.
It's a new offering to the community, so trying to shout from the rooftops and let people know that we're here and we're open and trying to knock down barriers to access with regard to insurance and finances and things like that.
Yes.
Really open our arms to this community specifically because over the last couple of years, we've seen quite a few centers close and not as many open up.
Yeah. No, at the community, I feel like we're really grateful that you guys are here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the wake of PCCA shutting down their inpatient unit, Daybreak closing down their primary SUD, which is substance use disorder.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine closing the in-person PHP. Therapeutic Solutions closing down. Having a footprint in this region is really difficult because we're pretty heavy Medicaid.
Yeah.
A recent poll showed that 82% of people seeking behavioral health services in Spokane County, at least, which is our neighbor, right, were covered by Medicaid. And Medicaid reimbursement rates, although they did go up a little bit in this last year, over the last 10 years or 12 years, however long it's been since the Affordable Care Act, those reimbursement rates have become less and less attractive to private equity centers.
It's true.
So that's difficult when your business model depends on commercial insurance policies.
Yeah.
And you don't have a lot of those coming through, especially for the outpatient centers, that don't have the luxury of pulling from out of state to, fill their census. It becomes a difficult thing to manage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then with the Medicaid facilities, declining reimbursement rates, you only have, a percentage of the revenue to operate a facility. It's tough to retain staff. And on the heels of COVID, and especially during COVID, if you lost staff, it was like you're that much closer to closing your doors.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So not only do you have this great career, but you're also a father and a husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 That's probably my favorite part of my life.
Yes.
Yeah. And the part that I don't get to devote as much time as I would like because I'm so busy with the work and the responsibilities and doing those things. Thankfully, I have a really supportive partner.
Yes.
And I have a co-parent, their biological mom, who steps up to the plate time and time again and helps, support our little family. We share custody 50-50, so it's a pretty wonderful situation.
Yeah. And your wife is in a very similar field, so I feel like that's why she gives you a lot of grace.
Yeah.
She understands.
Yeah, but she also deserves a lot of praise. We know what it was like when we were grasping at straws and fumbling to figure out what recovery was supposed to look like, and there, as was the case with me, there were a lot of missteps and a lot of damage that I caused, during that fumbling process. And so if somebody's reaching their hand out and saying, "Please help me," like we just feel like it's our responsibility to reach down and grab it.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's 3:00 in the morning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes, though, the phone has to go off because, we've got kids and they're going to be up at 4 or 5 sometimes. And
yes.
Yeah.
And have some boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress, getting better over the years.
Yeah. I mean, let's dive into your story.
So take this opportunity to recognize my privilege, right? I grew up in a part of the world that had a lot of that. My father was a business owner. I went to private school. On the outside, he looked at my family and my upbringing. He would say I checked all the boxes to have this super successful, like very few bumps in the road sort of journey.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show you that alcoholism, substance use disorder, it does not discriminate.
No.
So, it didn't become clear to me until my 30s. When I got into recovery, I moved to Spokane for treatment at age 29. And I started doing, therapy and working a program, a 12-step program, and unpacking some of the underlying issues that eventually led to my substance use disorder. It all started when I was 6. Anxiety took root when I was 6. The details of which I just would like to speak, very generally about. But my parents, they separated when I was 6. And to me, I didn't really understand what was going on, and I'm sure they tried to explain it to me, but for my little 6-year-old brain, it was like, I woke up one morning and my dad was gone, and I thought he was dead. And 6 months later, he was back, and that really didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Oh, my gosh.
And that happened several times over the next decade. As I got older, I started getting more familiar with it and understanding, but, you can't take away that kind of core belief and family system dynamic that it just, it took root and it grew and it developed and it looked like different things over the years too. And I think part of the reason it went undetected is I was really successful in school, like great grades, a lot of extracurriculars. I'm an artsy kind of guy, play cello, classically trained vocalist. Did every main stage theater production in high school. Just did a lot of things where people were, praising me.
Yeah.
And I just loved that.
Oh,
I ate it up,
Mm-hmm.
And that, that really was a desire to be closer to my father, right? And get his praise and recognition. Not to say that he was a loving father, and I received a lot of that from him, but it was like I could never get enough, right? And so it started manifesting in my extracurriculars and academics and things like that. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I never touched a drink or a drug, but I was feeling that kind of burnout, you know, of just like constantly going. When I look back at my life and I think about my schedule, it gives me anxiety now.
Oh my gosh.
You know, because like
that's a lot for a young
6
person.
a.m. to 11 p.m. I was out, you know, doing all of those things. And I'd come home and have to do homework. Sometimes I was up till 3, 4 in the morning and then just repeat.
Goodness.
And rehearsals every weekend, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. It was like,
I'm getting anxiety right now just thinking about it. That's a lot.
so I burned out. I fizzled out.
Sure.
Maybe my senior year, I just stopped caring. And, you know, my last theater production wrapped and I went to an after party and I was sitting around with my friends and I was looking at, you know, what I had been missing, looking at them kind of accepting each other. And it wasn't based on merit or achievement or anything like that. It was just like, we're letting our hair down, we're letting loose, we're having a good time.
Yeah.
And like instinctually, I just reached out and I grabbed my friend's beer and I chugged it. That was my first drink. And then I went straight to the back room where the guys were smoking pot and took a bong rip. And I didn't even know what that was at the time. They just said, put your...
Yeah.
And then I spent the next 6 hours on the floor, you know, staring up at the ceiling, contemplating life and going, this is it. You know, I have arrived. This is what I've been missing. And so, you know, much to my mother's dismay, I had been accepted to 3 colleges. I told her that I was going to take a year off and I was going to do this.
Oh my goodness.
And that year turned into 12 years.
Oh man.
I did try. I went to school here and there throughout those 12 years, but mostly I saw it as an opportunity for beer money, for party money. You know, the financial aid was enough to pay my rent and support my lifestyle, and I didn't really care if I got good grades at that point. I didn't know what direction I was headed. I wasn't really passionate about anything. It was just kind of like getting by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did your parents have anything to do with how ambitious you were as a child? Like, did they push you to be that way?
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot. I think, to be fair, I'm still kind of unpacking it. And again, I don't want to speak for them. So I'll just say as generically as I can. You know, they were raised in family systems with certain dynamics. And we're all a product of that kind of nature versus nurture situation, right? So we inherit some things that we wish we didn't. And, you know, the pendulum swings maybe a little bit too far in the opposite direction sometimes. And so anyway, I think success for them in raising children looked like kids who were productive, who were talented, who were not just sitting around being lazy, which is what I eventually became, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, they created every opportunity for me. They went the extra mile to open those doors to see if I was interested in it.
Yeah.
I think, you know, where my naivete / responsibility begins is I was seeking that approval. And so I took them up on just about every offer. And then I didn't let myself stop until I become the best at it, you know?
Yeah.
So.
You still do that today?
No. I mean, there are definitely things that I'm passionate about now, but I know why I'm passionate about them, and I do want to excel in that. But it's not for it. I choose to believe. I do believe it's not for personal gain. It's you know, a lot of it is, like I kind of touched on earlier. Families shouldn't have to go to the lengths that they go to when their loved one is on the brink of death.
Yeah.
As it is so many times with substance use disorder and mental health issues. It shouldn't be as complicated to navigate behavioral health field as it is.
Yeah.
And if you spend enough time working in this field, you kind of learn the tricks of the trade, so to speak. You learn the pathways, the barriers to access, how to get around them, who to call. Just like any industry, I would guess. You know, who do you know?
Yeah.
But that's all public information. And so that's what I'm doing with my nonprofit is I'm trying to like create a system that you can navigate easily, that you don't have to know the right person. You can know where to go to find the right person.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. So during, your alcoholism, Did you have any experiences where you thought, like, maybe this is the wrong path? Maybe this is going to get me, maybe I'm going to end up dead,
Sure.
like anything serious that happened?
Sure. I think probably greater than 90% of those 12 years was spent in denial, or maybe just not even being aware of what the future held or could hold for me. But the last chapter of it, the darkest chapter, tons of moments like that.
Yeah.
And that's where like the push and pull happens, where I choose to call it a disease, the disease model of addiction.
Yeah.
Your disease has a voice that's so much louder than your voice.
Yes.
My disease had a voice that was so much louder than my authentic voice.
Right.
And so you have moments, whether you're sober or not, but generally speaking, when you have less alcohol in your system, you have those moments of like clarity where you're like, I can't keep doing this. This is not sustainable.
Yeah.
I want to try to do something differently. And then once you drop too low on blood alcohol content, that's when the disease voice kicks in and says, I'm going to die if I don't get some alcohol. That's quite literally what I experienced, at least.
Yeah.
Your brain is talking to your liver and your other organs and things like that. And with alcoholics, there's like, I'm not going to get into like the science of it, but there's special chemicals that are produced that, you don't process any food that you're consuming. You don't hydrate from the water that you're drinking. Your body tricks your brain, tricks your body into thinking that only alcohol is going to be what sustains me.
Wow. Wow. How often were you drinking?
I can laugh about it now, and sure you all alcoholics will relate. My family, the people that cared about me, I don't know that they necessarily knew something was off until the very end. They might have been like, something doesn't seem quite right, but they would have had no clue that I was 20 beers deep. It was a constant thing all day, every day, from about 2010 until 2013. Prior to that, it was like I could get through the day and then just party hard at night. But I would outdrink everybody and stay up later than everybody, and then get very little sleep and then go to work the next day.
Yeah.
But once I figured out the hair of the dog, that's when the game really changed for me.
Oh my gosh. What was your rock bottom?
It was about 9.5 months. So when I couldn't physically function at work anymore, I'd played the game for about a year of like going to the bathroom to throw up and drink, whatever I'd brought in my backpack or whatever I was working in a restaurant, so they'd send bottles of wine back and I'd, run to the bathroom just to get well, essentially.
Yeah.
But when that was happening like every 15 minutes and people were noticing, saying, you got to stay on the floor, and then I'd go out to the floor and I'd just heave into a trash can. I was like, I gotta take a break, guys. And I still didn't really understand at that point that it was the alcohol. I thought it was anxiety.
Yeah.
Which, anxiety definitely played a role, but it was
Sure.
amplified so much by withdrawal symptoms. So that started that 9.5 month journey where I stopped working. I cut things off in my relationship with my girlfriend. I found some couches to crash on, a couple trips to the hospital, and eventually, a 5-hour drive from Portland back down to my house that I grew up in, my father's residence. So he could keep an eye on me.
Oh, my goodness.
And, I'd put together a week, 2 weeks. I think 32 days was the longest of white knuckle sobriety, we call it. Sobriety without a program.
Yes.
And then I wouldn't see the point. I was like, I'm fixed. I'm better. I'm fine. And, I was like, I can't go back to what I was doing, but let's try this out. Let's try drinking
goodness.
2 or 3 drinks and then calling it quits. Everything they talk about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I did. And what I found out is, if you think about like a boxing match, I could win a few rounds, but eventually I'm going to get KO'd. And the KO for me was grand mal seizures.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so several trips to the psych ward, a trip to jail, and a lot of wreckage.
Oh. Did you make the decision to get yourself into, like, did you go inpatient?
I have to be careful, like, in how I perceive my journey and my role in it. Like, it's important to realize that in recovery, I let go of the wheel. I'm no longer driving the bus, right? I'm living life on life's term.
Yes.
I have a connection with a higher power,
Mm-hmm.
and I respond to the calls that are coming.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So I would love to say that it was my choice to go to treatment, but it really wasn't. I was in the middle of an intervention. Oh, and that's, like the second part of that thought is sometimes it could be dangerous to perceive oneself as an exception to the rule, right?
Yeah.
I'm different than,
Yeah.
I'm better than, what have you. But in many cases in my story, being successful in treatment after an intervention, that's one of them.
Yeah.
Especially the terms that I found myself in.
Do you
And
mind
again,
sharing the terms?
yeah, I mean, I didn't really understand it at the time. I didn't understand it until I started working in the field, just exactly what I got put into, like in the middle of. So yeah, at the end of that 9.5 months, that really destructive chapter of my life, I was in the middle of an intervention.
Is that from your family?
Yep, initiated by my family, some of my dearest, closest friends in attendance. And, I'm saying no, 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 no. And I'm pointing the finger at my dad and my brother and everybody else and trying to deflect. And then I went outside to smoke a cigarette, because I smoked cigarettes at that time, with one of my friends who's no longer with us. Sweet, sweet lady. She said, don't think about it like you have to go to treatment. Think about it like you're going on vacation. And it's not a permanent deal. You just get to like tap out of life.
Yeah.
Because this hasn't been going very well. Tap out of this situation for a little while, and you don't have to have your mind made up or your opinion about it just yet. You can figure that out when you're there and then come back. So I kind of like that, for whatever reason, stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I went back in, and like any good alcoholic, I started negotiating the terms, right? Said I'll do it for a week. It's supposed to be a 30-day program. I'm going to do it for a week, and I'll decide if I like it, I will stay, and if I don't like it, I will come home. And they said, sure. I couldn't believe it. I was like, yes.
You thought you were in control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we crave as alcoholics, is
Oh, yeah.
control. Turned out to be a one-way ticket. And after those 7 days, I was on the phone, and they said, yeah, you can come home if you can get here.
Oh.
And I had a backpack with a change of clothes and 10 cents in my pocket. And I didn't know where Spokane was on a map. And it was April 2014. There was snow on the ground.
How far away were you?
I think it's about 650 miles or something.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
You have to go up through Central Oregon, Bend, connect with 84 at some point, go through Tri-Cities to get up here. I didn't know that at the time. I just knew that I wasn't anywhere close to home.
Yeah.
And I knew that I could probably, rely on some of my old tricks and character defects to make some fair weather friends, and I could couch hop and, survive.
Yeah.
I knew how to do that for, a couple weeks. It would probably end with psych ward, hospital, jail if I did that, but that was an option. Or I could accept defeat. And I could listen to what people were telling me in the treatment program and in the rooms. And so that's when it kind of changed for me. But what I found out when I started working in the field later on is that, my parents were sold on medical detox, which is necessary for alcoholics, especially alcoholics with a history of seizures. A lot of folks don't know that detoxing from alcohol comes with implications, like it could end your life without medical supervision and pharmaceutical intervention and a lot of other things. So they were sold. They paid almost $20,000 to send me to a medical detox, and it wasn't that. It's a PHP program. PHP stands for Partial Hospitalization Program.
Okay.
Which is outpatient. It's the highest level of outpatient care in behavioral health.
Okay.
And it came with a sober living component. And so for a family that doesn't really know what's what,
Yeah.
it looks a whole lot like you're sending your kid to detox.
Oh, no.
But, the house managers, they were 6 months sober themselves. They didn't know any better.
Oh, my
I'm
goodness.
friends with a lot of them to this day.
Yeah.
But they let me refuse my medication because I didn't like the way that it made me feel. And that's the anti-seizure medication.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
I know the liability is, it's like how they survived, like how the client survived and that business model survived for as long as it did blows my mind. And there's still people doing that today.
Wow. How did you survive that?
That's what I'm saying. I'm the exception. Like I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I went to treatment with hundreds of people in that program that I'm aware of. 2 of us have stayed sober since then. A lot of them relapsed. A lot of them went back out. Some of them came back. But a lot of them died eventually.
Oh my gosh.
Not necessarily in the treatment program.
Yeah.
Some of them in the treatment program, but a lot of them outside of the treatment. Like it just didn't set them up for success.
Wow.
So why was I successful? I don't know. Divine intervention.
Right.
Because it's my best thinking got me to where I was. It's not like all of a sudden I had a PhD in recovery.
Right.
You know, like
right.
I didn't know what was going on. I made a lot of mistakes in my first year. I still make mistakes. I'm human.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why.
So once you got out of there, what was the next step?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enter mistake number
Oh,
1.
Really? Okay.
You know, I didn't
Yeah.
follow all the suggestions. Followed a lot of them, but one of them is, you know, don't get in a relationship in your first year. Of
Oh,
recovery.
yeah. Yep.
And, you know, as much as I love my kid's mom to this day, and it's no fault of her own, we got in a relationship, and it kind of changed and skewed our priorities, you know, from working our own program. It was like all of a sudden we're going to meetings together and doing everything together and just love each other's company.
Yes.
Fast forward 5 years, 6 years, we've got 2 kids together. And so, I mean, that was literally the next thing is they told me I was graduating treatment. And I was like, are you sure? Like, that doesn't sound like a good idea. From what I do understand about recovery is like, you shouldn't give the control back to me.
Yeah.
I need to be tethered to this for as long as I possibly can.
Definitely.
And they're like, no, we got somebody coming in. You got to go.
Oh, my.
So I called one of those house managers. I was like, can I move in with you? He's like, yeah. And then the owners found out and they were like, nope, you can't do that.
Oh, my gosh.
And I had my bags packed and I literally had nowhere to go. So I
Wow.
went to the girlfriend's house.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, where do you allocate all the responsibility? We all played our parts, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like discharge planning is something that is still overlooked today and could be a lot more thorough.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know, it's a capitalist society, and these business models, they're focused on the revenue and the bottom line.
Yep.
And so when it's time, clinically, when insurance is saying it's time,
Yep.
they're not going to get any more money out
Nope.
of
So
it.
it's time to go.
It's time to go.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd just say really pay attention to the treatment centers and the programs that are starting that discharge planning from the moment they walk in the door.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So true. So what tools did you use? I mean, clearly you have overcome a lot. You're very successful at life. You probably don't 100% think that about yourself, but I think you're doing a pretty damn good job. You know,
Thanks.
and so what did you use? What tools did you use to get where you are now that you could offer to our listeners? And I realize every case is different. I'm not asking you to give direct advice. Just tell us what worked for you.
Well, what worked for me was treatment. For better or for worse, I went to treatment, and I've been sober ever since.
Okay. So did you relapse?
No.
Ever?
No.
How?
I'll use the example of my wife. She's living proof. You can go to one of the treatment centers that's just like barely staying open, you know, as far as funding and reputation and all those things. You got
Yeah.
a concrete floor that you get to sweat on, you know,
My
as
goodness.
as you're kicking. You know, some people need that rude awakening. And don't respond to the cushy, comfy, like, we're going to feed you and wash your clothes.
Right.
And that's like,
That's so
we have
true.
that here, but like there's that on steroids, you know, in Florida and Southern California. Here's a beach and a private pool. And,
Yes, it's like a resort.
Right.
Yeah.
That idea worked for me, although that's not what I got. That's what was like, that hooked me in.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like
It's so true.
everyone gets to have their own experience.
Yep.
And when you let go of control, it's exactly what you do. You let go of control, and you are in God's hands.
Yep.
And God works through the people around you,
True.
whether they have good motives or not.
It's so true. He can use anyone. Yeah.
If I could prevent people from having those bad experiences, I would.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to do.
Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, I think exposure in general, even if it doesn't work in that treatment episode, can plant a seed. And, as much exposure we can get, and especially if we can normalize the conversations and reduce the stigma around addicts and alcoholics and the behavior surrounding it, like, that's good.
Yeah.
It's all good. When I was new to recovery, I had home groups in both Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous.
Okay.
And I went to Cocaine Anonymous as well. But
did you do all the things?
I did all the things.
Okay.
And here's another thing about that. To graduate to phase 2 in my treatment program, I had to have a sponsor, and I think I had to be on step 4.
Okay.
And being the A student that I am, I was like the first in my cohort to like check those boxes.
Yeah.
Got to go to phase 2 and started working, 5, 6, 7 with my sponsor. And then one day he just stopped answering the phone, which was really like a bummer.
Yeah.
Because that was like
Should
my strongest tie to the recovery
gosh.
community. So that was some adversity that I had to overcome. And then I got another sponsor, somebody whose message I found, appealing, I guess. When I heard him talk in meetings, it was like, oh, I can, that sits well with me. So I asked him to be my sponsor. And
Okay.
we started again on the steps, and we got somewhere around the same spot. And we went to a meeting together, which was a meeting that accepts all walks of life.
Okay. Sounds messy.
Yeah. I went to, as we do in the programs, we hug a lot. We just hug people. We let them know we're grateful they're in our lives and like really appreciate. And, we hugged, and his hand moved down my back and onto my bottom.
Your sponsor?
My sponsor.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
It's good that I can laugh at. I didn't feel like incredibly violated like some people may,
Yes. Yes.
And I'm sorry if this is making light in the wrong setting, but I found it like comical to the, it was a bummer for sure because I had to go find a third sponsor. It was like,
yeah,
this isn't going to work out.
Nope.
Sorry.
Nope. That person needs to be very safe.
God, it wasn't until I found my third sponsor, tow truck driver.
Oh.
Just like the quintessential like AA big book thumper. Like,
okay.
He showed me how to be of service. He took me all the way through the steps, and he stayed on me, which is what I needed. He wasn't like overly aggressive as a sponsor as you can find,
yes.
if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Like some people, I'm not going to use the term or the slang that they use to describe them, but he wasn't like overly that way, and he wasn't overly soft either. He was just like just the right amount for me to like keep me on track and hold me accountable and guide me through that process.
Nice.
So I definitely would not be where I am without the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah. Do you still keep in contact with him?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a connection. I mean, it's like this really deep relationship that is...
I know. I was trying to like figure out how far I can go with this. He married a woman, probably 8 or 9 years ago, I want to say. And she has an adult child with addiction.
Okay.
And without like unpacking all of their personal stuff, I ended up sponsoring him for a little while.
Okay.
In fact, before I worked in treatment, they called me to kind of lend a hand to get him into a treatment program. And so that's when I got to see like a 12th step in action.
Wow.
And
talk about full circle.
Yeah, I mean, talk about connection.
Yeah.
Super connected to that whole family, and
they trusted you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being accountable, getting a job.
Yeah.
That was a tool for sure. Once I got to phase 2, we were allowed to apply for work, and so I just hit the ground running, turned in like 100 applications in my first week, and got to choose between 3 jobs. Again, #privilege, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Not everybody is that fortunate. But it worked for me. I went to work for an insurance company. I was on the admin side processing RFPs. I was an intake analyst. I knew nothing about insurance at that time. I hardly ever had insurance in my life, But I learned a lot, and that gave me the skills necessary to apply for another insurance company in a customer service role. And I did that for 4 years. You know, that was my first salary paid position with benefits.
Yeah.
And I felt like a big kid.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
at that point. Like,
For sure.
I'm an adult now. And so I held on to that probably longer than I should have. But, you know, stability and accountability were tools for sure. And, you know, part of working a program is being of service to others, carrying the message to the alcoholic or addict who still suffers. And so sponsoring other men was important and a tool for me to stay sober as well. I thought once I hit a year, like there was going to be a line out the door of all the people who wanted me to sponsor them. And unfortunately, that was not the case. So my ego was still pretty like out of control. But it was probably a year and a half or so in that somebody finally walked up to me and asked me to be their sponsor. And it was like, yes, of course, you know.
Awesome. So how long have you been sober?
A little over 11 years.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes less and less important to me how
Sure.
long I've been sober.
Of course, because it's
stay
normal
sober.
life now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I never want to forget, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, in the early days, I really looked forward to picking up coins. So you get a 24-hour coin when you come in.
Yes.
And during my first week, right, I was hardly listening because I was getting ready to go home, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once I decided to stay, I hit a week. I was really excited for my next meeting because I thought I was going to pick up a 1-week chip coin.
No.
No. It's 24 hours to 30 days, and I
Yes.
was pretty distraught.
Yeah.
You know.
Crap.
But I really appreciate, like, every month you get a new coin.
Yes.
And then once you hit 6 months, you have to wait 6 months to get the next one. But they still give you an 18-month coin to get you over the hurdle to 2 years.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's like every year.
Yeah.
And, you know, for many years, it was like, oh, I got to wait a whole nother year to get the next coin.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, at this point, it's like, it's a coin. You know?
I know.
I mean, I still enjoy, like, putting it on my social media and taking a quote from the big book to, like, carry the message.
Yes.
But I see people making these, like, novels about their experience, their strength and hope, which is great. But, like, it feels a little bit strange to me when people are so gung-ho about doing that almost like for the likes and the attention, because it, you know, for me at least, it's not about me anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, my posts are like, here's a line from the big book and here's a coin and you figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, like I think settings like this are difficult because I don't know who the audience is going to be necessarily.
Oh yeah.
It could
It's
be
worldwide.
Right. It could be anyone.
It could be anyone.
So it's like, I gotta kind of watch what I say, although I don't really give a hoot what anybody thinks
Right.
about me as an individual.
Sure.
You know, I represent a company, and you know, I take great pride in my nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I want that to continue to grow and to flourish.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want to take this opportunity to talk about your nonprofit?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to.
Let's do it.
Well, we're rebranding.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Oh.
You guys know it as Spokane Outreach Networking Group.
Mm-hmm.
And we've held between 20 and 24 events every year, both the last 2 years, with one major event in the fall called the Impact.
Mm-hmm.
And the Impact stands for Interagency Movement for Patient Access, Care, and Trust. And as we've grown far beyond Spokane County, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to have Spokane in the name of our nonprofit.
That's so true.
You know, for example, I was down in Boise, and I'm trying to tell people about this event and how we meet twice a month. And one of those meetings is virtual to be inclusive of people outside of our immediate bubble.
Yeah.
But they still didn't quite get it. They're like, why? I'm, 6.5 hours away. Why would I want to be a part of a Spokane group?
Yeah.
Like, that's a fair point.
Oh, my goodness.
We had a board meeting recently, and we are going to use the name of our event as our new DBA.
Okay.
So we're going to be Impact, the Interagency Movement for Patient Access, Care, and Trust.
Okay.
And that doesn't limit us to Spokane County. It doesn't limit us to Washington State or even the Pacific Northwest, because who knows how big this thing will grow.
Yeah. What's its purpose?
Our mission is to elevate interagency collaboration in the behavioral health field by knocking down barriers and improving access to care. our goal was to develop a comprehensive resource guide that's free and accessible to everyone. If you've ever been in a situation yourself, or you've been helping a family navigate crisis, a lot of times we go to Google.
Yeah.
And Google is, just a list of the highest bidders. People generally, organizations with pretty aggressive sales teams that they call admissions. That was the case with my family. They got on the phone and they were, sold on, aggressively closed to spend an extra $17,000.
Yes.
And a lot of these are, there's a difference between in and out of network benefits.
Yeah.
And especially in behavioral health, it makes a big difference. You're talking about the difference between, you've already run up most of your out-of-pocket max on in-network benefits with your family practice and your local urgent care or whatever.
Yeah.
So you might have a few $100s left on your out-of-pocket max. But if you go out of network all of a sudden, you're looking at $8,000, $12,000, sometimes unlimited out-of-pocket max. And those services, those are accrued really quickly in behavioral health, especially in the higher levels of care. You're talking like $2,500, $3,000 a day.
Yeah.
So, again, tangential, but our nonprofit is trying to educate the community and give them a leg up on that process, so they're not just shooting in the dark with Google and not falling prey to those sales teams. We give them direct contact information, and that's after we've qualified the lead. So they can search through roughly 300 organizations that we have included in our resource platform now, and that's just growing exponentially. They can sort and filter by age range, by level of care, by primary concern or diagnosis, and it'll trim down those 300 organizations to be hopefully around 4 or 5.
Okay.
And then it'll differentiate as an in-network program or an out-of-network program.
Okay.
Because the majority of the time it makes sense to go in-network.
Yeah, it does.
Certain insurances, they don't have a lot of programs in different regions that are in-network and contracted. So they may have already, almost reached their out-of-pocket max out-of-network. And so it might make sense to bill out-of-network because it's less than the out-of-pocket max for the in-network. It's not, there are, again, exceptions to the rule, but they can make an informed decision, informed choice.
Yeah.
Again, it's not us giving any sort of preferential treatment. There are programs that I love and adore and think, wish the world, like everybody would go to them. But it's more of like, here's what's available in your region. So if you're on the resource guide, which is a website, it'll ping your IP address. So be careful if you're using VPNs and it says you're in Switzerland, because we don't have any programs in Switzerland right now that are a part of our community.
Not yet.
But it'll ping your IP address and it'll give you everything within a certain radius. I think right now it defaults to 30 miles, and that's one of the enhancements that we're working on, is to be able to customize that. If you want to expand your range because you're looking for an inpatient detox, residential, anything in that world, you're going to be there for 30 days generally or more. So it doesn't matter if you need to like travel there. But if you're if you're looking for outpatient level of care, you need to be able to commute to and from every day. And so that's why the 30-mile radius is the default right now.
That makes sense.
And then, so it'll trim it down, and then it'll give you the direct contact information for our stakeholder. And our stakeholders, or stewards, we've called them, of the behavioral health community at large. They're the people who have been coming to our meetings who, we haven't, it's not been an effort to like get as many people involved as we possibly can. It's like, no, we're going to invite somebody one or two at a time to come check out our meetings and hear about our mission and our vision and our values and the why behind our work, and see if it aligns with them. Yeah. Which most of the time it does.
Of course.
And so they can deliver the message too. If they get a phone call from a family or a doctor who's accessing our guide, we want them to like carry that message and give them, concierge service. We don't want them to say, hang on, let me get you over to my admissions team. And if for some reason there's an unforeseen barrier, I'm not going to try to come up with one hypothetically now, but sometimes things happen and where it's just not an appropriate fit for that program or that level of care. Then they know that to handhold them till they get to the right place.
That's nice.
Instead of just say no.
No, sorry, too bad. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You have a website?
Right now, the website is songwashington.org.
Okay.
If you hit .com, it'll still go there. We own both domains.
Okay.
But we're going to need to change that in the near future. We'll keep the domains for a certain period of time
Sure.
and have them just go to the thing.
So where can they find you on social media?
We primarily run Facebook campaigns.
Okay.
So we have a group and a page on Facebook.
Okay. Is that under song as well?
Yeah, I think it's S.O.N.G.hyphen Spokane Outreach Networking Group. It's really convoluted, but we wanted people to be able to find us if they were searching song or the full name.
Okay.
So, the group is a community, and, is modeled after what we saw in some of the individual therapists and private practices. They have these groups online.
Oh, okay.
Where they're reaching out with questions like, has anybody ever dealt with severe, ADHD, autism with restrictive eating that, might have room, they have this insurance.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a really good idea, but
Yes.
for programs, not just individual therapists.
Yeah.
Although there's not as much activity as I would like to see right now, there's still a fair amount of that going on. And we do have, a LinkedIn, but right now we don't really use it much.
Okay.
It's really all about getting on the email distribution list, which you can send us a message through the website.
Okay.
Or drop your email in any of the threads or comments on Facebook, and then you get invites to our meetings.
Yeah.
Twice a month, once virtual, once in person. And of course, announcements leading up to the annual event.
Does your current job completely support your nonprofit? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's pretty cool, as I think as one grows and develops in a field that they're interested and passionate about, they kind of learn what to ask for and how to advocate for that. So when Paradigm had reached out to me last September, October, something like that, and we started the pre-hiring, interviews and things like that, I was really clear with them. I was like,
Yeah.
this is how I operate these days, is I wear two hats wherever I go.
Yes.
One is the organization, that's probably the most visible,
Mm-hmm.
the organization that I work for that gives me a paycheck, because ultimately my livelihood depends on that. But I also wear this other hat,
Yeah.
which is mission driven and doesn't pay me any money at all,
Yep.
but helps me feel really good about this work. If you spend enough time in behavioral health, you see some of the darker qualities of it, depending on which organization you're kind of pulling back the curtain on, and some of the tactics that are employed. Because and I get why it's there, right? I've said it earlier in this interview, but when you're dealing with human lives in a capacity that kind of mimics sales,
Yes.
and you employ some of those tactics, you lose sight of the client.
No kidding.
And it becomes about the bottom line.
Yep.
And you see people navigate that better than others.
Yeah.
You see organizations prioritize that more than others. And when you're in the others area, it can be really disheartening and really sad with a lot of tragic outcomes.
I'm sure.
So I needed to do something altruistic. I needed to do something that I felt was completely bettering the community.
Yes.
That was independent of my paycheck. And so that's where Song came about.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our guests in regards to going through recovery, getting the help you need, any direction? If somebody's listening right now and they're either in their alcoholism, or maybe it's a family member who is dealing with an alcoholic person that they're like, I don't know how to help them anymore. What would you say?
I would say a couple of things. If you're breathing, there's always hope, as was the case with me and so many others. If you're the family supporting the loved one and you're not sure about what next steps look like, try not to judge and try not to dictate whether or not the loved one can continue doing what they've been doing. It's a precarious situation when somebody detoxes off of alcohol, especially. Benzodiazepines are included in that category. Medically compromising. If their blood alcohol content goes down, or with benzos, if they're detoxing too fast, you don't want a cold turkey. You have to taper off these things.
Yeah.
You need to taper under the supervision of somebody who knows what they're doing. So try not to judge them.
Yeah.
Let them keep doing what they're doing until you can figure out what the next step is.
Yeah.
And if you have questions about next steps, you can use our resource guide. You can call any one of these people and organizations, and they'll help.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is probably going to play indefinitely. So if you're watching this a year from now, you don't have to tune in to this.
Yeah.
But October 17th, 2025 is the official date for our Impact event.
Okay.
It'll be at Northern Quest. We're renting out their entire ballrooms and
Ooh.
another room for, food and entertainment afterwards. And we're really looking for sponsorship.
Yeah.
So, it is an ask.
Yes.
It is hey, do you have anything left in your budget that you could share with us?
Yes.
Because we're so grassroots. That's what we rely on entirely. We don't have any grants right now.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any employees right now.
Right,
It's
right.
just like this.
I know it's the whole thing
Yeah.
because you have to prove all of these things to get the grant,
Right.
right? So I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But especially, we would really like to see this year sponsors who are invested in behavioral health in some way.
Yes.
Like they want to contribute to keeping initiatives moving forward in behavioral health,
Right.
but don't operate in the space. I see credit unions a lot doing that, and I think that's great. Like
Yeah.
shout out to Numerica and STCU and
Yes.
Kitsap and all those places. But car dealerships, whatever it happens to be, tribes, whatever. If you are interested in what we're doing and want to support it, we would love to ask you for help.
Yes, it's a really great cause.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you do a really good job of making sure that they get the credit and, the limelight that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the community gets to see that they're putting their dollars into something that's worthy, that they're doing something good for the community, and it's a write-off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a total win for people that want to sponsor.
Yeah. We are a 501c3 and we earn tax exemption status. So we are a charitable organization.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Angie.
Safe Harbor is dedicated to helping survivors of trauma find healing and restoration through support, resources, and community. They provide hope for those affected by human trafficking. Visit safeharborforfreedom.com to learn more or support their mission today. Thank you so much, Safe Harbor, for supporting the survivor's voice. Next week on The Survivor's Voice,
an incident with my mother where she actually tried to take my own life. From that moment on, I just knew that God had a plan for me. You knew that I was going to die.
Thank you for listening to this story on The Survivor's Voice. I'm your host, Angie Sedor, reminding you that every survivor's story matters. A heartfelt thank you to our incredible listeners for your support and to the survivor community for your courage and resilience. You are the heart of this show. Special thanks to our producer and editor, Christina Elder, to Bowman Carter for our beautiful song, and to Dan Wise with North Idaho Podcast Productions for bringing these powerful stories to life. Your dedication, talent, and most importantly, your hearts make the survivor's voice possible.